I've been getting a bunch of downloads or insights around the significance of this day, of Resurrection Sunday, and what's been streaming in through my higher level of conscious awareness is that Jesus dying on the cross was extremely symbolic of dying to oneself, dying to fear and ego death. Jesus was a man, and he was a man that from a young age was tapped in and tuned into his inner reality and able to cultivate an inner understanding of himself as the Son of God. Jesus knew who he was through his upbringing. When Mary became pregnant and when Mary was informed that she would be carrying the Son of God and that he should be named Jesus, the blueprint, the foundation was laid in that moment. And so Jesus, at a young age, before his birth, in his inception, was already being mirrored through his parents and through those in his environment who he was. See, our parents and our environments are our first mirrors in life. As a young child, we have no idea or any remembrance of who we are once we're birthed into this plane of existence. And it's up to our parents and our environment and our surroundings to model to us, to show us, to tell us who we are. And Jesus had that. And through that modeling, through speaking that life onto him, he was able to cultivate a strong inner foundation rooted in a worth that was supernatural, a worth not of this world, but also was able to understand that he was not of this world, but yet he was in it. And that being in this world meant being susceptible to the things of this world. And so Jesus, over the course of his life, until his death, until his resurrection, his rebirth, constantly was dying to himself, dying to his fear, dying to the fears of this world, through cultivating and strengthening his inner reality, his inner knowing that he was in the world but not of it, that he was the sovereign Son of God, and that despite what the world may say or think or do, it was not a true reflection of who he was and who he is. Jesus lived a life of dying to himself, dying to his fear, to show us the way. Jesus would get quiet. He would meditate, he would pray, He would spend copious amounts of time with himself, strengthening his inner knowing, feeding the narrative that I am Jesus, Sovereign One, Son of God. I am in this world, but I am not of it. I am worthy. I am deserving. I am enough. I am lovable as I am. So when temptation rose, when the devil would whisper in his ear, when the fear would creep in his times of meditation and isolation as he cultivated his inner reality, he was able to choose love over fear every single time. I think that it's easy to forget the fact that Jesus, was human, just like you and me. And so he had the same temptations. He had the same fears that exist in this 3D reality that we live in. He had an ego. But he chose to transcend it. He chose unconditional love over fear. And I think that because he had that mirror in the womb, at birth, through his family, that it allowed for a truly solid foundation for the journey that he was meant to, embark on. He had to be strong in mind for the task that he was given. We are all sons and daughters of God. We are all sons and daughters. We all have the infinite ability to tap in and tune into a higher inner understanding rooted in the highest consciousness. But in order to do so, we must transcend and transmute fear. We must die to ourselves, to our ego, the false identity that has been projected onto us for generation after generation after generation after generation, to get back to truth, to get back to our sovereignty, to choose to love, to choose love, to choose unconditional love, to choose to embody the highest vibration in spite of fear. That is our task, as it was Jesus' task. But we've been duped to believe that the task is to go out in this world and have the world validate us through material things, fame, fortune, riches, false idols. And it's time to break free. It's time to be reborn. Cleansed by the fires and reborn in the love and light of God. The God that resides in each and every one of us. The God that never leaves our side. The God that believes in our ability to get back to Him, to get back to ourselves, to remember that the journey is an inward journey and not an outward one. We are all a part of the infinite and glorious consciousness of unconditional love of God. His spirit, His DNA courses through our body, but we've become so disconnected from it. But it's time. The time is here. Pick up your cross and bear it. Allow yourself to face your fears and choose love. Choose unconditional love. Choose the knowing that you are worthy, deserving, enough, and lovable as you are, despite what the world may try to tell you. And show up in the world with that truth and that knowing. Allow yourself to cultivate an intimate relationship with you so that you may meet the God within you. Allow yourself to die to yourself. Allow yourself to die to the fear, knowing that what's on the other side is what is destined for you. An abundant life. A life in which you are deserving of, and that your soul desires, that your soul is crying out for. We think that at times when times are at its lowest, that we've been abandoned by God. And that thought alone is an illusion. That thought alone is a trick of the ego, the devil, the enemy, fear, to keep us perpetuating cycles of abandonment where we seek outside of ourselves for the answers when the answers are within. To keep us in toxic karmic cycles, never reaching our divinity, never finding our way back home. You have never been abandoned, but fears have allowed the illusion to perpetuate for far too long. Perpetuate in our thoughts, perpetuate in our behaviors, perpetuate in our emotions for far too long. And it's time to transcend that. It's time to transmute the pain and the fear and the suffering into love and grace and compassion, to make our way back to ourselves, so that we may know truly the grace of God. So, my call to action: pick up your cross. Allow the death of a false identity. Allow the death of a false God. Allow yourself to feel the pain and the suffering that has endured over generation, over generation, over generation, so that you may birth a new nation rooted in the deep inner knowing that you are worthy, deserving, enough, and lovable as you are, and to go out in the world and to show up in the world with that knowing, instead of wanting the world to tell you, because the world will never tell you. It's not its purpose, it's not its function. You are your purpose. And boldly saying yes to the people, places, things, opportunities that reflect back to you who you are, because you know who you are.